I love horror. Films, TV shows, books, but if you ask me, nothing quite beats the true terror of a horror video game. And there's been no shortage of greats over the years, from the original Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, all the way through to games like Amnesia and the Dead Space series. Every Halloween, I dive into Steam and look for a new game to scare me senseless. But this year, I noticed something a little strange. When I went under the horror tag on the store and sorted by user reviews to discover the best of the best, I noticed I didn't recognize the majority of the games. Have we discovered a hidden trove of terrifying tales, or are Steam user reviews just rubbish? I thought I'd go through the supposedly best top 25 horror games, not bundles or DLC, just games, on Steam to ask, are they any good? And more importantly, are they scary? Welcome to the Steam 25 Horror. Sat at the number 2 spot is The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Unlike a lot of games on this list, The Binding of Isaac is, well, very popular. It's hardly a hidden gem, and I would imagine most people have played or are at least aware of the game. But let's say you haven't. The Binding of Isaac sees you take control of Isaac, as he tries to escape from his religious mother by descending down a series of basements, each more sprawling and dangerous than the last. Throughout each run of this procedurally generated roguelike, you'll encounter a collection of weird monsters, twisted bosses, and a shed load of helpful and some very unhelpful items along the way. From the footage on screen, you should get an immediate feel for the look and style of this game. Horrific monsters and nightmarish creatures drawn in stylized pixel art forms that distract from the reality of what you're fighting. The sentiment of often cute pixel designs masking monstrous ideas echoes through the entire game. Isaac himself is a cutely drawn character, in a horrific world of blood and poo, forced to fight using his tears. A phrase that will often come up when we talk about this game is simple but effective. The graphics aren't stunning. The worlds and rooms aren't often that visually interesting, minus a handful later on, but they are effective. The enemy designs are another example of this. While there are some great bosses and enemy designs, a huge number boil down to big circle, worm, or human. All of this might sound like a harsh review of the game's visuals, but bear with me. This will come back later and make a lot more sense. Ultimately, the visuals are fun. They aren't groundbreaking or stunning, but again, we'll come back to the importance of that later. The biggest hook of any roguelike, a roguelike if you aren't aware is traditionally a game with permadeath and procedurally generated levels, is replayability. If my character is going to die every 5 minutes, why should I keep starting over? Getting over that hurdle requires tight gameplay, unique runs, and a desire to get further. The Binding of Isaac succeeds in all of these areas masterfully. Isaac as a character is, here it is again, simple but effective. He doesn't have a signature move. He can move, shoot, drop bombs, or use an item if he has them. No gimmicks at all. Instead, the focus is on polishing these moves to perfection. Isaac always feels fast enough in combat, his attacks are large and readable. Tying back to the enemy designs, while some can often feel simplistic, this allows them to be intensely readable and instantly understandable. A great example of this are enemy modifiers. Most enemies can show up in different colors, signifying they have some sort of additional quirk to them. Again, simply recoloring an enemy to be green to signify it's different is a very simple and easy solution, but it works. It's immediately obvious. All of this helps with that desire to keep playing and go further. The simplicity and readability of enemies means every time you die, it very much feels like your fault, rather than the game's for not giving you the right information. Knowing you could have gotten further if you just moved 2 steps to the left is the sort of annoying thought that'll bring you right back for that next game. The items in The Binding of Isaac are what really gives the game its uniqueness and freshness with every run. On a purely visual level, the way each item changes the look of Isaac and stacks with other items means no 2 runs will leave you with the same character. Plus, the way Isaac starts to look more nightmarish as the world around him does as well is a lovely touch. Each floor contains at least 1 item, some requiring other items to access, except the first one. That's always free. The range of abilities these offer is staggering. Even basic upgrades to speed and range feel immediately satisfying, and the stranger ones range from directions of shots, the effect they have, all the way to flight and secret room finders. The sheer number of items and combinations means each run has you playing entirely differently from the last. Of course, there is a downside to this, though it's a downside most roguelikes face. The items range from extremely powerful to minorly helpful, and getting a poor item at the start can leave you feeling hopeless and uninterested in the run, though the sheer speed at which you can enter a new run in the game means this rarely leaves you too irritated. The Binding of Isaac is instantly and immensely replayable. The variety of items and combinations pulls you back over and over, and while some enemies and environments can feel lackluster, the polished gameplay more than makes up for this, and indeed uses these designs to enhance the feel of the game. But, is it scary? Like all the games I look at here, I switched all the lights off, plugged in some headphones, and really set the mood to spooky, to give the game the best shot it could at making me shiver. So, is it scary? No. There is a healthy chance The Binding of Isaac will be the most polar game on this list. As a game, it's brilliant. As horror, it's just not. The visuals are full of cartoon gore and essentially every bodily function out there, but it's so cartoony and bright that it's hard to find any of it really unnerving or disturbing. If you really pay close attention to the story, read into the enemy designs, the stories told in secret rooms, and the tale of Isaac and his mother, you may start to find a shred of discomfort. But that's as much as it'll ever be, and that deep dive into the world is something only a tiny handful of players will ever discover. There's really not much to say on The Binding of Isaac as a horror game. It's not really meant to be scary, and it isn't. Would I recommend it? Yes. If you don't already own it, The Binding of Isaac is simply one of the best roguelikes out there. Prices vary from platform to platform, but for the number of hours you'll put into it, it's worth it. I would say if you can get it on a portable console, a Switch, a Vita, then it really shines as a wonderfully enjoyable time killer on trips. The one caveat to all of this is that there aren't any scares. If you're just looking for horror, looking for games that'll get under your skin, if that's all you're after, then this really won't satisfy. Here's where it falls in the currently very small ranking table. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, a comment, and hey, maybe even subscribe. Hope this has been helpful, and look forward to seeing you next week with the next in the Steam 25 Horror. See you then.